The next thing is ego. I want this thing because it evaluates to who I am. And you'll see this trait in narcissism because they live outside of the prefrontal cortex, that world map. It's built on very damaged ideas and often seeking external things to prove that. And so I want this expensive car because I need this title, this thing that I see myself as. It's for immature or mentally ill people in some way. It's not that luxury is bad, but it's the way that you go after it that's a problem, mainly. When you realize these issues with desire, and I'm sure there are many more, but these are the main ones I can think of, you start to be able to master yourself in some way, where now, without these things in the way, these influences that steal you from your better self, this is what a monk was saying when they came up with the original 7 deadly sins or whatever, that these forces, wrath, envy, lust, they motivate you, they possess you to do things that aren't in the most righteous favor, which is in alignment with God or the lens of your culture, which you've generated allegory from. You're regressing. You're devolving from what culture has been evolving externally. I'll say it again. The child doesn't have the knowledge or the capacity to develop these tools properly. And without reaching that level and then intaking that knowledge and ability to see that world, will we be ever plagued with people with types of cluster B personality disorder. We see it really is just driving us away from our most righteous self. The next point was Schadenfreude, and this means malicious joy. I believe this plays into the function of laughter. I will explain laughter. Laughter can be described as the dance with death that does not take us yet, or perhaps someone else. Laughter is first witnessed when the parent puts their hands in front of their face. To the child watching, they are now in chaos. They don't know where their parent is. A few moments later, the parent will reveal their face and say, "Peekaboo," and the child will meet with laughter, providing he's mentally sound. It's the relief. It's the, "Oh, I was surprised, haha," kind of experience. We see with slapstick, someone else gets hurt in a ridiculous way. There is an element of chaos. That shouldn't have happened. How did they survive? Or, oh, thank God that wasn't me. Whatever it is, we laugh. It evolved from a warning through a threat detection. Our past primate selves would start howling, laughing, almost, in the trees when there was a threat around, and it would become infectious. They'd all start alerting everyone to that shock in the bushes, but it changed. It became a cultural thing which we all learnt to use almost as a tool to make us see evil and horror, but reduce it to cope with it. Now, laughter doesn't have to be bad, but it's always coming at something's expense. It can be used to prove a point that could be funny, but the message is more important than the joke. The joke is there to shock someone. Now, with Schadenfreude, or the psychopath, groups of people may band together and find someone that is vulnerable, that they could bully or provoke, constantly gaining laughter. They can go further to feed narcissistic desires, such as with things like Satanism, which is created for controlling of people with psychopathy or cluster B personality disorder. When they're faced with the innocence of a child, they see something they can distance themselves from the forces of natural law by destroying that child, by abusing it and watching it scream as they feed off that pain in ritual. They hate the innocence or the idea of God controlling them, that their bloated sense of self, they get the narcissistic feed off of these sacrifices. They'll drink the blood of the child and they'll feel strong for it. This is mental illness. It doesn't do anything for them, but psychologically they've tricked their brain for it to work. It's like an orderly schizophrenia. Groups do this online too. They will go after someone they see as a problem in society. Often it's a liberal or some type of snowflake person, someone that's vulnerable, who lets people know about things in their life, oversharing, in where they might be weak, they might be gay, they might be trans. These groups will see those labels as a problem for whatever reason in society. And they will go off and they will hunt down that type of person. And they will ritualistically beat them through online harassment. You have things like mask and game, cyber stalking, even gang stalking, which is a crazy phenomena, but is now being accepted by psychologists like Sam Vaknin, realizing how mental illness can be created by these covert harassments. Now, with this Schadenfreude, the target doesn't have to align with what they see them as. They only have to put enough misinformation around there until that person starts to look like that figure, and where they're just an effigy to sacrifice and torture ritualistically while thinking that they are heroes in society or becoming stronger in some way. Once again, mental illness. Now, I personally believe that the ability to generate wisdom, to have tools to see this thing, is intentionally gatekept by cultural engineers. And people are swept up into subcultures to no longer try and manipulate culture or be interested in politics or science. Instead, we see the opposite, that groups are generated by intelligence agencies. Stories are used to stop people thinking. Consumerism is used to stop people thinking. Misinformation and paranoia, constant conditioning through Hollywood, bogus reports of aliens, UAPs from the Pentagon as an example. They have been debunked for years now, and still the footage is replayed for years and years after, as if it feeds into this whole alien narrative. But all this is doing is invading the collective unconscious and creating schizotypal worldviews. Media has to be held accountable for the disinformation that it shares with people, in my opinion, because it's these very problems in society that have been used since the start of civilization to justify wars, slavery, why we had rulers or monarchs in the first place. It is the origin of all evil and why we have criminals mostly in society, why we can't end wars with diplomacy. Because we're all schizophrenic in some way. And I can further say that you find patients of Eugen Buehler, and what they will say is that the people who were giving them voices or messing with them in some way, giving them paranoid schizophrenia, come from Mason lodges or Jesuits. Now this is consistent from the 1800s, 1900s. And you have to wonder, why these two groups in particular? Is it because of secrecy and the ability to create a conspiracy? Well, if you look into these groups, firstly, the Masons have master psychologists. These people develop means to control people through psychology. The use of something like Manly P. Hall's seething energies of Lucifer is the idea to put words out there and get a reaction. There are quite a few authors that are deeply involved in Freemasonry and very open about it. And it's these kinds of clubs that I believe began putting the idea of witchcraft, sorcery, and sort of twisting what was early medicine and psychology into the public to create cultural schizophrenia, to stop them delving deep into these subjects, because paranoia, I don't want to be looked at as crazy. Meanwhile, others might take these ideas and turn them into very schizophrenic worldviews, and they could be used to psyop. Just like in modern day times, we hear stories of the alien abduction phenomena, where the symptoms are real. People end up with implants, they have very strange experiences that could honestly relate to people that were experimented on in Nazi death camps. From missing time, hypnosis, intense emotional feelings, and then the idea of UFOs feed these experiences, and the majority of the cases around the time of its popularity were around MKUltra. And to me, I believe it's just to shut victims up of experiencing these kinds of things. They're just psychological operations, so the truth never gets out. These are cultural engineers, where there's controlled chaos and no one's the wiser. Now this would delve into conspiracy, and maybe I will add something later on in the video or make another video. Firstly, though, I mentioned the Jesuits are also blamed by these so-called schizophrenics. Now, they have something called the Secret Instructions of the Jesuits. It's an old book. The Jesuits are a religious group. They're the Holy Roman Catholics, and they, from the Holy Roman Empire, swearing allegiance to the Pope. And in the book, they make it pretty clear, giving directions to followers to basically go after those who will part way with property only to spend wealth amongst